Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Ginny. Today I'm going to share with you how I made this Gilded Autumn pumpkin using my designer series paper and a wooden pumpkin that I purchased online. This project is quick and easy and is great for a home decor item. So let me set this aside and I'll show you how I got started. Okay, I found this pumpkin on Amazon, but you can use another pumpkin. This process will work for whatever shape that you choose, as long as it's smaller than the designer series paper. So, I took my wooden pumpkin and I traced it onto a piece of scratch paper. At that point, you can see I simply took my pencil and divided the sections the way I wanted to. I kind of drew the lines here, but I will give you a PDF with the pattern if you'd like to order the specific pumpkin that I give you the link for. After I sketched the lines the way I wanted, I cut the lines apart so that I had my 5 different sections of the pumpkin, and I made sure I numbered them. Since this is kind of a symmetrical project with the 2 sides being approximately the same, I didn't want to get them mixed up. The next step I did was to take a piece of designer series paper of my choice. I made sure that the orientation of the paper was the same on both sections of the pumpkin, and this piece of designer series paper that I used, because of the height of the pumpkin, was 7 inches. So I took my piece of designer series paper, I took the section that I wanted, I flipped it over so that I was protecting the designer series paper, and then I laid my pattern also upside down onto it and traced it and cut out. At this point, I was ready to start assembling, so let me show you how I did that. So I am going to start by placing some adhesive around the outside of my pumpkin. It doesn't have to be perfect here because I'm going to also add some to my designer series paper. I'm going to take my dampened paintbrush here and simply spread that out to make an even surface, and then I'm going to take my section of the pumpkin that I want to start with and add some adhesive to it, and I can add some more to the wood if I'd like to. I simply liquefied or added some moisture to that adhesive so that I could spread it out and make sure I had a good seal against all the edges. I'm going to pick that up and I am going to smooth that down. And if you notice, it does hang over the edge a little bit here on the bottom because I did cut outside those lines so that it was a little larger. I'm going to start with the next section here, so I'm going to add some adhesive onto the back side of my pumpkin. Make sure you dry fit before you decide which is the back and which is the front so that you don't add adhesive to the wrong side. And I'm going to spread that adhesive out a little bit and then adhere this down to the pumpkin. Now I'm making sure I get the pumpkin along the top edge and along these little cut edges so that I know it's where I want it to be, and I can always trim off that excess on the bottom like I showed you on that first piece. Okay, I'm going to dip this brush into the water again, and I'm going to move the centerpiece to the side and bring in my outside piece on the left side. And I am going to repeat simply by adding adhesive here onto the back, spreading out that glue to hit the outside edge. And forgive me, I did not touch that to my paper towel, so that's a little wetter, but I think it'll be okay because I've got that other adhesive on the back of the designer series paper here. There we go. I've got that smoothed down, and I'm ready to move to the next piece, making sure it's in the right place. Adhesive on the designer series paper, and adhesive on the wood cutout along the edge, and then smoothing that out with the brush to make sure there's plenty of adhesive along that outside edge, and laying the next piece in. Adjusting it. And by working from the outside in, what I'm doing is allowing for my designer series paper to overlap in the way I want. If I did everything from one side to the other, I would have a problem with the pieces overlapping in one direction, but that centerpiece not showing the way I want it. And because we're using liquid adhesive here, I can slide this over and adjust so that wood pumpkin doesn't show. There we go. And of course you can add a little adhesive on the back side if you need to. Now I'm going to work on the stem, and I'm doing the stem next because I want that center panel to cover it. I'm going to pull that adhesive out again to the edges with my brush and then add more adhesive onto the pumpkin stem. I love that we can do this with our multi-purpose adhesive. It makes 3D projects like this a snap. There you go. And I've got that stem in place where I want it. Sliding it a little bit because the multi-purpose adhesive allows me to do that until it's dry. And then I'm going to bring in the centerpiece here, and as you can see, it straddles those two edges nicely. I can simply tilt it so all the wood is covered. I'm going to add my panel here with some adhesive, and then I'm going to add that multi-purpose adhesive around the outside, smoothing it a little bit to get it to the very edges. And of course you can pull that back with the wet brush on the other side if you haven't used both sides of your brushes. So there you go. I'm going to pull that up a little bit. So I'm covering the wood and adhere. And I'm smoothing down those edges so that I'm making sure that they've got a nice tight seal. Okay, while that dries, I'm going to start working on the leaves. I've cut these beautiful leaves out of our stitched leaves dies. They've got these wonderful, nice, large dies, and I love the fact not only can you cut, but you can emboss these wonderful little stitched lines at the same time. So I'm going to bring my first leaf in here, and I am going to adhere this one flat down. I'm going to leave that stem showing for right now because I am not real sure what I want to do with it. The second leaf I'm going to bring in, I'm also going to adhere that flat. And I'm going to kind of turn this at a jaunting little angle here. You'll need to forgive me, my fingers have some adhesive on them. And then this last leaf that I've done in the Cajun Craze, I'm going to put some dimensionals on. I'm going to add a dimensional here on the top and the bottom just to give it a nice surface to bump up. And then I am going to take my leaf here and I am going to place it, I think right there on my pumpkin. Now I'm going to bring in this absolutely gorgeous basket weave ribbon that I've taken off the bolt and I've tied into a nice bow. I've checked it against here and I really like the way that looks. I'm going to take my scissors and I am simply going to cut across the grain just to clean up those ends. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side, getting it the length I want. And then at this point I can take my paper snips and I can snip off these stems to the length I want. I want to leave a little bit of stem there, and then I'm going to bring in my bow and lay it there. I'm just looking for placement at this point because I want to bring in my copper spirals. So let me show you what those look like. Now this ribbon is a gorgeous 1/8 inch grosgrain of copper foil. It's a fairly stiff ribbon, so doing this is easy to do. I have simply taken my ribbon, wrapped it around a dowel, taped it on both ends, sprayed it with the heavy starch, and then used my heat tool to dry it. So it is ready to go now, and it's a little loose because I have carried it over here and played with it a little bit prior to doing this. I am going to take the tape off both ends. Oops, and I am going to snip this end off here so that I get rid of those little straggly parts and slip out the dowel. Now, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your dowel is nice and tight, and so if you want some larger loops, you can loosen it up a little bit like I did here. Now what I'm going to do is bring in my mini glue dot. I'm going to fold back the paper there so I can see it, and I am simply going to pick up a mini glue dot here, move my ribbon, which is why I didn't put it down yet, and get my little end here and place it where I'd like it. This can be a little tricky based on the fact that this is spiraling, and then I can trim it where I'd like. There you go. Okay, I am going to take this last one and I am going to trim it in half so that I have 3 little swirls. I'm going to pick that mini glue dot up again, and I am going to set this one so that it's doing behind the other side of that leaf and down. Now you could add these little swirls before you do the last leaf if you prefer, which is probably what I should have done, but since that leaf is down, I am just going to tuck these in around it. And let's see, the other one here I'm going to put right here next to it, so I've got a shorter little swirl. Okay, now I'm ready to add my large bow here, and I am going to do that by adding several glue dots onto the back. Let's see here, I want this to attach really well. You could use a dimensional if you would prefer also. I'm going to take that, I like that where it is, so I am going to press down. And then if I'd like to, I can trim these ends a little bit more to make the ribbon the way I want it. There you go. It's that quick and easy. A beautiful gilded autumn pumpkin ready to go. And of course, if you'd like to trim those pieces along the bottom so they don't stick out underneath your pumpkin, you can do that at this point, either with your paper snips or even a sanding block if you would prefer. If you'd like any of these products, feel free to stop by my online store. You can get there from my blog, Stamp with Jini. Thanks for joining me.